African.
Give my view on the situation. Minority Leader.
Speaker, I'm compelled to seek your indulgence to be heard on this matter. One, for the record. Two, to respect the 1992 Constitution, our standing orders, and our practices. Mr. Speaker, first, I want to refer you to Order 53, but in particular, Order 59. So those arguing as if someone is in search for evidence, no. We are only doing what is required of us. Order 59 provides, Mr. Speaker, complaints concerning the accuracy of the votes and proceedings or the official report may be raised at the time appointed under Standing Order 53, Order of Business for that purpose. The Speaker, as you recall, yesterday, even at conclave, I drew your attention in the presence of the clerk. At that material time, I saw even Excellency Vice President and the Mrs. seated, when I said that I will raise this important matter on the votes and proceedings, because, Mr. Speaker, I know the political consequences and its ramifications on my caucus and on my members and on their constituents, especially in a public that is gullible and buy anything. Mr. Speaker, as you recall, even when we were walking out, I drew the attention of the clerk and the deputy clerk at the door there that I take this matter seriously. And Mr. Speaker, I don't want to believe that this side of the House, for purpose of someone's professional negligence, is being discriminated against. Because, Mr. Speaker, our walkout was too loud not to be recorded and not to be reported by the clerk and the table at clerk. Our walkout, particularly on a major economic policy issue like e-levy, has consequences, Mr. Speaker, on long-standing majority leader like the Honorable Cletus Avoka, how the people of Sebila will perceive him that on this important, yes, he was majority leader before you. Mr. Speaker, so this matter, I now want to go to the records. Give me the 29th one. Mr. Speaker, I'm holding Friday, 26th November, as he referred to it. There was a walkout. That walkout was appropriately in paragraph 7 of page 9. In an apple in the chamber, the majority caucus walked out after the Right Honourable Speaker had directed that the notice be cleared. So their walkout was recorded and put in the votes and proceedings as is required of you under Standing Order 59. Yes, Speaker, then 29th, we cannot accept that this can only be coincidence, that only members of the minority caucus were those that could not be visibly seen. Let the clerk at table and the clerk be reminded that it is not for nothing that we have visual recording of the Hansard department and we are keeping copies of it for other purposes. We do. We have copies of Hansard and in producing it. So, Mr. Speaker, if on 29th we walk out, it is not noticed, we are demanding an explanation from the clerk and the head at table. The circumstances why our walkout was not recorded. Mr. Speaker, can it also be a coincidence that even the order paper of yesterday, for the first time, as I see it, I want to be corrected, at least the order paper of Wednesday, 30th March, Mr. Speaker, I want to work it against Standing Order 53 for the record. Standing Order 53 again, so we are raising it. Order 53 says that business for each sitting of the day as decided by the business committee shall be set out in the order paper. This is the order paper. And shall whenever possible be transacted in the following order: prayers, oaths addressed by the president, messages from the president, formal communication by the speaker. Then it goes on, Mr. Speaker, to item H, 53(1)H, correction of votes and proceedings. Yesterday, conspicuously lost on this order paper is the correction of votes and proceedings. It's here. So, Mr. Speaker, it cannot be mere coincidence. And Mr. Speaker, I feel we take strong objection because the political fortunes of my colleagues who have mistakenly been misreported as absent. Ghana Web is reporting 8 NDC minority MPs absent themselves from e-levy. We are endangering even their lives to constituents who may feel betrayed by them of not standing to stand with them in their objection to this matter. So, Mr. Speaker, we think that the clerk and the clerk at table owe us an apology or an explanation as a caucus, and in particular to the individual MPs affected. Because if you don't respond to this, you are contributing to the decline of their fortunes in their constituencies. Mr. Speaker, on the matter of Minister for Chieftaincy, it could be me. It could be me. I could be sick, I could be dying. Sensitive matter. But we respected the sensitivities. Now we then said that let persons who can testify work and at least satisfy themselves that an effort is being made for him to legitimately represent his people. So for the record, Mr. Speaker, without only the honorable question for compelling reasons of respect to the law and rule of law, who was legitimately responding to the law, and therefore got here at the time probably when our side had worked out. So, Mr. Speaker, for anybody to tell me that this matter, we are not being discriminated against, I want and I demand an explanation. Speaker, we want it published in order to repair. And Mr. Speaker, in the world of social media, which has become a toxic source of misinformation, I fear for the lives and political standing of my members who have so been misreported as absent, as if they were in collusion. They were in collusion to get it. But when you sit here and say votes and proceedings is evidential and is reported daily, be reminded. And when you are struggling, we will demand on other matters. You be reminded of the domesticated position of the Supreme Court in accepting the persuasive ruling in Pepper and Hart. We are guided. The parliamentary debate remains a guide to interpretation. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Speaker, I was a bit late in entering the House, but I heard the submissions of some colleagues who have come in respect of members that have been marked as absent on the Tuesday, 29th March 2022 sitting of this House. The Speaker, I sympathize with those of them who are claiming that they were in the House. I want to say that members are listening to me. They have been marked absent, and they have reason to indicate that they were here. So they are claiming that they were present. That's the law. I can't understand why anybody would not agree with this language. I'm not going to you as marked as absent, but you have risen up to indicate to us that no, Kofibwa. I was present. You are aspiring on this. That is your claim. So, Mr. Speaker, that is what it is. So I'm saying that I sympathize with them. And Speaker, this indeed is not the first time this is happening. It's become a routine issue that almost every day members purport to have been here, and yet they are captured as having been absent. And then the Speaker will give a directive that these people who have risen to indicate that they were present, they might have been seen by a couple of people, a couple of members in the House, and with that as witness, the Speaker will issue a directive that the appropriate correction be effected. Mr. Speaker, the thing is, the issues that have been raised is because of this, that on occasions, members have raised issues about the way we record attendance in this House. Maybe once and for all, we should come to some determination on this, so that we are all at the journey as to how to capture it. Now that we are in a new regime of electronics, we have been talking about introducing systems which will record members who appear in the chamber by the press of a button, which would have been customized for particular members. Mr. Speaker, I believe the time has come for us to set this matter out so that we are all sure that when we put in appearance, we are marked as present. Only, I think 2 weeks ago, Speaker, the same.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to the show. My name is Ama Pratt. Today is a Thursday, and so again, the Hard Talk edition of this show, The Couch. I'm happy always when you make time in the evenings to tune in to Pan-African TV to watch the Hard Talk edition of the show. Now, over the last few weeks, we've been discussing Parliament. You know, we've been looking at all the issues that are coming up, essentially because of the kind of Parliament that we have today. That's the hang Parliament. So we've been trying to make sense of the issues as and when they come up. And it's interesting that these issues, surprisingly, are things that are in our constitution, are in the standing orders, things that we should know already. But somehow, because of the kind of Parliament that we've had in the past, these issues have never become a thing. But today, because of this thing, this phenomenon of a hang Parliament, now more than ever, we are having to look at everything that we have written down on paper and all of the grays that come up, you know, with all of these things. This evening, I am very happy, very privileged to be having a conversation around all of the issues that have come up, not just one issue like we've been doing in the past. We are here, you know, with, I can call him an expert, you know, because he himself is a former member of Parliament. He also happens to have led, actually, the legal committee, yes, you know, at a point in Parliament, head of the legal committee in Parliament. And so, you know, if anybody understands this issue of a hang Parliament and whether it has served us or is serving us as Ghanaians and our expectations, then it is my guest in the studio with me this evening. So thank you. We would have a great time. Let me quickly remind you that our WhatsApp line is very active. You know, please feel free to participate in this conversation. Send us a text. You know, send in your comments, your views. Use the WhatsApp line that's streaming on the front of the screen. But also, if you are watching us on Facebook, you can leave a message there, and I'll read that message as well. We are live today, the 31st of March this Thursday. Let me quickly welcome, our very honorable Inusa Fuseni. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you
for making time. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
To sit with you. First things first. Were you excited about, us having a hung parliament? Is this something that excited you?
Well, thank you so very much, Amma. I think that it is important that we consider our history, how Parliament has been constituted, particularly under the Fourth Republic, where political parties who contested elections won almost absolute majority in Parliament, and there was no need for issues of quorum to be established, because political parties had the numbers to form quorum. The Constitution has been very clear on how quorum is formed, depending on the members, the total composition of Parliament, how many members of elected members of Parliament constitute Parliament. And so the numbers have never been a problem. And because the numbers have not been a problem, impunity has sometimes characterized the activities of government in Parliament. And so where a government had absolute numbers in Parliament, sometimes did not need the opposition. And government has to work with the opposition. But where absolute numbers were involved, government could do it alone. I mean, whether you were there, whether the opposition was there or not. Now, when you look at the history of democracies, where a government has far-reaching legislative reforms or innovative policy initiatives to implement upon winning power, such government will want an overwhelming majority in Parliament. Because those programs must have legislative backing. Those laws must receive legislative approval. And so if a government has enough numbers by itself to push through its programs in Parliament, then in the system of government like ours, the government is able to do much. Okay, even though the government will not, by doing much, will not be creating enough political space for all actors in Parliament to get involved. Ours, strictly speaking, is not a hung Parliament. Strictly speaking, a hung Parliament is a term used in parliamentary systems of government, or you want the Westminster type of government.
Right.
And so, in Australia, in India, in Britain, in Commonwealth countries, Jamaica, where you have a prime minister. The prime minister definitely is a member of Parliament, coming from a political party. So, if a political party does not win absolute majority, and here absolute majority is used to mean to win enough seats to be able to form government, then you have a hung Parliament.
Okay. Right. So there are real technicalities to
yes, so you have a hung Parliament.
So we are just using it loosely.
Loosely.
Okay.
Loosely, we are using it loosely.
Okay.
Now, because in Ghana, if we're really a hung Parliament, then NDC, if they were able to convince the independent member of Parliament to join them, they will form government and elected a prime minister.
Right.
Okay? And so a hung Parliament is where, in the Westminster type of system, where a party or a single party doesn't win absolute majority in Parliament for the purposes of forming government, and entered into coalitions with smaller parties to be able to get the number to form government.
Right. Right. Right.
Okay, so that's a hung Parliament.
Right.
So it doesn't really matter that a party has won enough. So you remember the Israel experience just recently.
Right.
The Likud party had the highest number of seats, but they could not form a coalition to be able to form government. So their rival party was able to do that because they didn't actually want the incumbent prime minister to continue because he was facing a lot of accusations. And so the rival party was able to garner enough support to form and even entered into alliances with ultra-right, members of the Arab Party to be able to form government.
Right.
Okay.
So in essence, and I'm happy that you are giving us this education. In essence, it's really more about the formation of government more than anything when it comes to this issue of a hung parliament.
It's really more about the formation of government.
Because it can directly affect who governs.
Who governs.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Now, in our instance, and thank you for the education, obviously we are, like I said before,
we're presidential. We are a new presidential system.
However, Honorable, there's a tendency for ours, what we are referring to as a hung parliament, to affect the smooth operation of governance.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So, even if you watch what the president said, around the 8th of January, or is it the 9th of January, 2021, on the throw up in Parliament, or in the elections, he said the people of Ghana had decided that they were going to give the political parties equal strength in Parliament.
Right.
And his government had no choice but to work to meet or to realize the aspirations of the people, to work with the minority, to work with the opposition party to achieve the aspirations of the people.
Right.
Simply put, the president did not need, or by our constitutional arrangement, the president derives his mandate directly from the people.
Right.
So it's a presidential system directly from the people. But there's a fusion in that in the presidential system, members of parliament cannot be ministers of state.
Right.
Okay. So our fusion comes from the fact that we have created a system where members of parliament can still hold their seats in parliament and be ministers at the same time. And that system is a parliamentary system of government. Right. So you see, you have added.
So we have a hybrid.
We have a hybrid.
The presidential and the parliamentary.
We have a hybrid.
Right.
And I think that at the last check, I think we were the only country in the world practicing that system.
The only country in the world
that practicing that system, because you either have to be parliamentary or you have to be presidential.
What would you prefer, parliamentary or?
Well, I say that. In 2009, when I was chairman of the Committee on Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, I was also a member of the EU, that's European Union, ACP, African, Caribbean, and Pacific Joint Parliamentary Assembly. We used to meet in Brussels.
Right.
I had opportunity to address the Joint Parliamentary Assembly, and I said that ours was an addition to the democratic experiment. In fact, at the time that I was addressing them, we had 2 women occupying 2 arms of government. And then I received a clapping for that. I said, yes, Ghana, we have 3 arms of government, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. The Speaker of Parliament then was a woman. The head of the judiciary was a woman. In the 3 arms of government, it was only the executive that produced a man. And that was His Excellency, late President John Atta Mills. And I received, and I said, so in our system, you can be a member of parliament and still be a minister of state. You need not resign.
I take it you prefer ours. I take it you prefer the hybrid.
First of all, democracy is an experiment.
Right.
Okay? And so being an experiment, you must tinker. And we have tinkered with parliamentary systems. You remember the Second Republic?
Directly.
Okay. We had a prime minister. Buze was a prime minister. Buze was a member of parliament. His party, the Progress Party, won the majority of seats in parliament. So Buze as their leader became the prime minister.
Right.
Okay. And in the Third Republic, that's the second, Buze was in the Second Republic. In the Third Republic, we had a strictly presidential system of government. And so the member of parliament could not be a minister. You remember Harry Sawyer was elected member of parliament, Article 78 or so of the Constitution. I mean, the Constitution allows the president to appoint a majority of his ministers from parliament. So in a situation of a hung parliament like ours, indeed, I can say without any fear of contradiction that it is the minority that runs parliament.
Today?
Today. Because they are not incumbent. They don't have ministerial offices to run. They are available to do parliamentary business. You have ministers of state who are also members of parliament who have to attend to their ministerial duties, right, and so cannot be in parliament all the time. And so where you have a strong minority, the government will be weak.
Interesting. I want us to take all the way back, because of course we are trying to answer the question as to whether this phenomenon of a hung parliament is meeting our expectations or not, you know. But you actually haven't answered my first question. Were you excited about the you know?
I was very excited.
Right.
I was very excited. Why was I excited? I was excited because we, as a country, we have been used to a system where the ruling government had majority, absolute majority in parliament. Okay, and even if the numbers were not that encouraging, because the president had executive authority, and the spoils of political office attaches to the executive office, and the president could by the use of carrots attract independent members of parliament. And I was in parliament long enough to know that some members of the MPP today were initially members of the NDC who were prevented from contesting seats in their various constituencies, who went independent, and when they won, the president dangled carrots before them, and they joined the MPP.
Very juicy carrots.
Yes, very juicy carrots. I mean, some were made ministers.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
They were,
and we will get
so that for the president to get absolute majority control of parliament. Because without that control, you can't push through your policies.
Okay. So let's take something like the election of the speaker.
So I was very excited because for once, we're going to experiment a new phenomenon. The dynamics in parliament was going to change. Right. I had no doubt in my mind about that. And I mean, then I saw that there was going to be an end to impunity, where we're going to have our way, whether you like it or not. Your views do not matter in this matter. And so, I mean, earlier parliaments were very characteristic of that. You had a speaker who, if he was not interested in what the minority was saying, would simply turn his head and look at the majority side and be waiting for them to initiate whatever debate they want and treat the minority with contempt. You can do that now.
What can you do? Right.
In fact, so the minority demonstrated that something new was happening in Ghana,
right, when,
for the first time in the history of African democracies.
So like the rest of us,
yes,
you're also expectant. I mean,
yes, highly.
So I knew
that something was changing in Ghana.
Something amazing was going to happen. Let's go into specifics. Then we went into the election of the speaker.
Yes.
As somebody, as a former member of parliament, as somebody who had actually chaired the legal committee in parliament, how did you see that process, and did that meet your expectation of this new?
I was part of the process.
Right.
So on the 6th of January...
You were actually part of the process?
Yes, on the 6th of January, I was still a member of parliament.
Right.
And so parliament was moving towards its end, its dissolution. And then we knew that, when parliament was dissolved, it would be immediately constituted after 12 o'clock midnight for the new parliament to come into session, and the speaker to be elected, new parliaments to be sworn in, and all those things. So while we were seated in parliament, an idea was floated. Initially, we were settling in on the second deputy speaker, and I know one or two people who were interested in becoming the second deputy speaker, because we were still steeped in the old thinking that being a minority were entitled to the position of a second deputy speaker. Then somehow the idea came out that, oh, you know, we are 137, 137.
We are actually not the minority.
We're not the minority, and so probably we could elect a speaker. Then the dynamics changed. Then those who were fighting, I mean, so there was a meeting, and then strategy had to be drawn.
Right.
You know, and before Parliament was dissolved, I was so clear in my mind that we were going to elect Bagban. I mean, Parliament was going to elect Bagban. I was not going to be part of it, but I was so clear that Parliament was going to elect Bagban, because
and that happened.
And that happened because we had elections. You know, if you have a sitting an incumbent speaker, and you have views from the side of the speaker saying that, well, we do not like the speaker, we won't vote for the speaker. They don't need to say that they will vote for
yours.
Yes.
I mean, your choice.
Because if we're 137, 137, and they simply abstain from voting,
that's it.
They have voted for you. Right. Because you need, it's a numbers game. And so one or two had come across that they were not going to vote. And clearly, what NDC had to do, the minority had to do then, was to ensure that every member of Parliament on the minority side was in Parliament to cast his vote. The issue of Ascent North was hanging. So my advice as I ended Parliament as a ranking member of the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee. The privileges enjoyed by a member of Parliament attaches to the member of Parliament when he is even in the chamber.
Right.
And no bailiff can enter the chamber to serve the speaker, I mean the member of Parliament.
Right.
And until a member of Parliament is served with a process of court, is not deemed to have notice of that process. And so I was part of the advice that they should get the Ascent North MP into Parliament. Right. Immediately Parliament dissolves, and he sits there until the voting is done.
That's it. Interesting times. Interesting times. This is when the letter of the Constitution actually develops lex.
So you see that when Parliament was constituted, there was an attempt to prevent him from voting.
Right.
And the question stood on whether or not he had been served with a process restraining him from.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, you learn about serving, you know, in the classroom.
Yeah.
What it means to actually serve notice.
Yeah.
To anybody.
Yes.
You know, I mean, forget to be in Parliament, but it's just anybody.
Yes.
And how the rules work. And it's interesting and exciting to see it, you know, at play like this. Okay. So now, again, and moving away from the election of the speaker, because that was very eventful, where for the first time, you know, the opposition, and I'm using opposition simply because of governance, got a chance to elect somebody from its side to be speaker, you know.
Our standing orders doesn't actually use opposition. We have departed from the use of opposition, and we have said minority.
Minority.
Yes.
Okay. But then that's also still in context. There are people in Ghana who feel, for our circumstance, we can't keep using minority and majority.
No, the definition of minority and majority, even though taken from the Westminster system of government, still applies to us, because the majority party in Parliament is the party or parties that have the highest number of seats in Parliament than that forms government.
That forms government.
That is in government.
That forms government.
Yes.
I think it's a very instructive part of the definition.
So if you have a majority is the party with the highest. So which is the party with the highest?
The NPP.
NPP.
Even if it's just a number.
Okay.
Right.
And that is in government.
Right.
So in our standing orders, majority and majority are defined in terms of governance.
Right.
Okay. In the sense that the party that is in power and has the majority of seats in Parliament is the majority.
So it still stands.
It still stands.
So we still have
yes. So I was left in no doubt even before, when there was this haggling about the whether or not NDC was majority or minority, that look, if you go by the strict definition in our standing orders, it could only be the MPP.
The MPP. So the MPP is the majority.
Yeah.
And the NDC
and
is
even
the
if
minority.
you accepted the definition that there's no minority and majority, and this came to minority group and majority group, which party introduces the government policy in Parliament?
MPP. The MPP. Okay. So now let's look at something else. And this one has to be the formation of the committees of Parliament and how this time it had even numbers from both sides. Is that a thing? Because
the formation of parties, committees in Parliament, and the number of members on a committee is determined on a ratio of the strength of parties in Parliament.
The ratio of strength of parties in Parliament. You have to explain that.
So if the party with the highest number of seats has a 2-to-1 ratio of the minority parties or party in Parliament, then their members on the committee will reflect that ratio.
Of course.
Okay, will reflect that ratio. So if they have equal numbers in Parliament, the ratio will have to be 1:1.
But the members of a committee, the actual members, and the fact of it being split equally, does it really matter? At the committee level, do you vote?
Well, you are talking about democratic representation.
Right.
And that principle must be seen in all the actions of Parliament. So in Parliament, the parties have equal strength. So that equal strength must also be reflected in the committees.
I want to know, how significant beyond, this democratic, the essence of it. I want to know if in real terms there are other benefits beyond this one. For instance, like I was asking, do you vote at the committee level?
Yes, we do.
Is it important?
We do.
The numbers, do they play out in the
decisions at committee are either by division or by unanimity or consensus.
At the committee level?
At the committee.
Okay.
I mean, it's a parliamentary consensus or democratic consensus that wherever there's a debate, wherever there's a discussion, that discussion has to end in a vote.
Wherever?
Whenever there's a discussion, that discussion has to end in a vote. That is the way the democratic consensus has been built. That somehow the debate must end, the discussion must end with one side holding sway over the other.
Right. Or one argument.
One argument holding sway over the other. How do we determine that? We determine that when we allow us to exercise our democratic right to stand behind the idea that we think we support.
Okay. So now let's look at this voting that you speak about, which is crucial to everything that happens in Parliament. You speak about whenever, whatever. So let's look at the systems of voting. Please teach us, or educate us on them. So we've been told that there's the voice votes. We've been told of head counting. We've been told of secret balloting. Would these be all there is, or are there more?
Oh, that's all that it
Okay, so let's take them one after the other. Let's talk about voice.
Voice, I mean, so when the president finished his State of the Nation address, and the speaker just 2 days ago, or yesterday, the president had concluded his State of the Nation address. The speaker indicated that he wanted an indication from the leadership of the House. The convention is that on ceremonial days like days that the president addresses the nation, no business is transacted after that. And so when the speaker indicated that he wanted an indication from the leadership of the House and called on the majority leader first to give an indication, he moved for the adjournment of the House. He moved and suggested that debate must start today. I mean, immediately after. The minority leader seconded the motion and added his comments on the state of the nation of the address presented by the president. That motion of adjourning the House, having been seconded by the minority leader, was put to a vote. Those who are in favor of the House adjourning to tomorrow, so and so, say yeah. And those who are against say nay. It was put to a vote.
Right.
When the vote was not so clear, the speaker repeated. He said, "I put the vote again."
Right.
Because he wanted to be so clear in his mind which side of the House had carried the day.
Right. I mean,
so even though it was a non-contentious matter,
it was still important.
As mundane as adjourning the House, it was put to a vote.
Right. Okay.
So that's a voice vote. Where the matter is non-contentious, where you can easily settle the matter with a voice vote, you do that. That's the first option.
Right.
So you see, and again, that is linked to the strength in Parliament. So where the majority had numbers in Parliament, the voice vote was used extensively to settle matters of debate.
Right.
But except where members of the majority were not in the House, and the members on the minority side felt that they had more numbers, and a speaker, even anytime a speaker ruled in favor of the majority and the minority had reasons to believe that the ruling of the speaker did not actually reflect the strength of the voice vote, then they called for division.
Right.
Or head count.
Head count. Right. And that would be the actual...
Then so you will stand up and the clerk at table will come and count.
You stand up and be counted.
And be counted. And then they send the results to the speaker, and the speaker will announce the results.
And that's the head count.
That's the head count.
The secret balloting is what we all saw.
Yes, the secret balloting.
That's what we all saw.
The secret balloting, I have always said that. I think that is the most democratic way of determining a matter which is contagious and litigious in Parliament. You see, because you cannot assume, even though we have a whip system in our Parliament and in most Parliament, which system is intended to whip members of Parliament on one side of the House into line to support government programs and policies. There are members of Parliament on either side of the divide who can rebel against the whip system. They are emboldened so to rebel if you adopt the secret ballot.
Is it
so up to now, even though the ruling party, the MPP government, and the majority party in Parliament is suspicious of the people who voted with the minority for Bagpin to be elected, they lack the confidence to come out to say that because it was secret ballot.
Right, but is this something that happens often? Is this something that happens a lot in Parliament?
It doesn't happen a lot. I'm just saying that I believe that is the most democratic.
Right.
I believe that it enables and affords members of Parliament the opportunity on either side of the House to express their views.
To use their conscience.
To use their conscience, sort of. And so I believe that probably that is the best. Right. It is not regularly used.
How can we get it to be more regularly used?
I say that it's a discretion of the House, where the members of Parliament feel so convinced that, and the leadership of Parliament, in particular one side, feels so convinced that the use of the secret ballot might reflect the true position of members of Parliament, and advocate same, and the Speaker is persuaded to use the secret ballot, then it is used.
Okay. So essentially, it's at the discretion of the House.
The House.
Okay.
Yes.
As and when.
Yeah, but the election of the Speaker has been provided for in the standing orders. The election of the Speaker must be by secret ballot.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Now we are also learning about quorum. You know, these are all things we are learning about now. So now I'm guessing that most Ghanaians understand, you know, what it means for the business when it comes quorum business, you know, just to start, because last week I was extensively educated on this, you know, on this show about this thing about quorum for business and then quorum for decision making and the difference. Now, this year, actually, you know, let's take this one, consensus. Briefly talk us through the consensus and then we'll come back to my question.
Consensus is just that when members of parliament either side agree.
That's simple as that. Okay. Yeah. So now, and of course, these are all provided for within the Constitution.
Consensus is provided for in the standing orders.
In the standing orders, right. But the two, quorum for business, quorum for decision,
there are provisions of the Constitution, repeated in the standing orders.
In the standing orders, right. So, I mean, the Constitution is not specific about the numbers. It states the half and the 1/3.
The Constitution is forward-looking, so it could not have fixed numbers.
Absolutely.
So we started Parliament with a 200-member Parliament.
Right.
So we went up to 230 or so members of Parliament. Then 245 members of Parliament. Then now 270 members of Parliament.
Right.
So clearly, the Constitution, being a forward-looking document, could not have fixed numbers. That would have required a constitutional amendment.
Right.
And so the Constitution fixes it in terms of percentages, in terms of fractions.
Right.
Okay. And so before members of Parliament can conduct official business in the House, there must be 1/3 members of Parliament. There must be about 33% of members of Parliament present in Parliament.
Absolutely. Now we've been given specific numbers, you know, because we've done the divisions.
No,
you know,
no. So in the 275 member Parliament, you just do a 1/3 of 275. Absolutely. So you see that you need about 92 members of Parliament in Parliament for the purposes of conducting business.
And then for
that is under Article 102.
102
of the Constitution.
Absolutely. Okay. Now let's come straight to e-levy. Let's bypass everything that has happened in the past. Let's come straight to what happened this week. Again, this issue of quorum has come up strongly, where the minority side says we staged a walkout because we want to test an earlier decision by the Supreme Court recently, you know, also in direct relation with the e-levy, where the Supreme Court insisted or stated, you know, this is about quorum again, quorum for decision making. And so in the minority's estimation, the walkout is vindicated by the decision of the Supreme Court. And so now the same thing has happened. We've walked out. We are going to court now to see if the Supreme Court would stand by its decision or, again, play games with it. Does it sound like proper reasoning to you, Honorable?
Well, it's proper. I mean, right. Who am I to question the reason of the minority? I don't think I have that capacity. So it's proper. I mean, it's proper, except that it's problematic.
Let's talk about that. Why is it problematic?
First of all, let me start by saying I have no doubt that in this 8th Parliament, and particularly with the e-levy, the minority has done fantastically well, making the e-levy a national issue. When the MPP government came up with the policy, little did they expect such a level of resistance. In fact, they were so confident that the e-levy could pass that immediately the budget, the 2022 budget, was presented in Parliament, and an indication given that upon the coming into force or effect of the budget, rule tools will be a thing, payment of rule tools will be a thing of the past. The government was so confident that they will have the budget passed and the e-levy approved or passed or ratified by Parliament that they even did an illegality. they scrapped the payment of the tolls without the passage of the before the passage of the budget. So that gives you an indication of the confidence level of government consequent upon the introduction of the e-levy.
Right.
Again, the minorities stood their grounds, fought a very good fight, brave fight, in ensuring that the time-tested traditions, parliamentary traditions and conventions were not bastardized because of numbers problem.
Right.
And so they resisted any attempt by the first deputy speaker to vote.
Right.
That resulted in fisticuffs in parliament. The minority's position was so firm that it attracted the attention of researchers who conducted research into the acceptability of the e-levy by Ghanaians. And the results are there for all of us to see. The minority were so firm and very eloquent in their criticism of the policy and its impact on the lives and businesses of the poor and vulnerable and of the Momo industry. Everybody now knows that this tax is a regressive tax. Government never told us that. It's a minority that made us know that.
Right.
And that people have even said that it was an attempt, or has been an attempt, to take money directly from the wallet of people with that the money transacting in the business. It's the minority that. So I have no doubt in my mind, if the minority's position and their resistance to the bastardization of parliamentary processes resulted in a Supreme Court decision.
Absolutely.
In the Justice Ablai and Attorney General's case. So I have no doubt that the minorities fought a brave fight. My worry is simply that this brave stance, this gallant display of bravery by the minority and a show of conviction by the minority resulted in an anticlimax.
Anticlimax. Let's talk, Honorable. You are in two positions now, you know, as a lawyer, and of course, you know, a lawyer with, I like pedigree, I mean, your pedigree, you know. Also somebody who's actually chaired the Legal Commission committee in Parliament. You have an understanding, first of all, of Parliament and its proceedings, and also of the law, the Constitution, how this can play out. So if somebody like you says is problematic, it's very weighty for me, because, you know, as Ghanaians, we are having a hard time. Well, let me not speak for every Ghanaian. Some of us are having a hard time with the decision of the minority in this. I agree. I also think that it's an anticlimax. For me, because of just looking around me and looking at everything that has been happening in the past and in the present, you know, we've gone to the Supreme Court and the outcomes have not been the way that sometimes you think it's so black and white. And you go to the Supreme Court and you learn about the gray areas and why it's not so black and white and why what you thought is not. And this is, again, me choosing my words very carefully. And so we don't want the e-levy. That's what Ghanaians, that's what I'm saying. I don't want the e-levy. Ghanaians are saying that we don't want it. All the research supports us saying that we don't want it. It's regressive, you know, it's against this whole digitization that we were promised. Endless conversation around why the e-levy is not supposed to be supported. Now, if a minority is playing a game, my only concern is that that game ends in us not paying for e-levy. As I sit here, I'm not convinced that this game will end in us not paying the e-levy, which is why I agree that it's an anticlimax. That's my problem. Honorable, what is yours?
Well, I have a slightly different view. Slightly.
Right.
I have indicated to you that the democratic consensus in this country is that we must always settle disputes through voting. That's the democratic consensus. And so it is a legitimate tool of parliamentary practice for a walkout. It's a legitimate tool. And both MPP and NDC have exercised that legitimate tool before. I remember as a ranking member of the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs of Parliament in the last Parliament, when the then Speaker, Michael Quay, treated our leader, the minority leader, with contempt, when the minority leader stood up on a matter that was so important to us, to express the views of the minority on the floor of the House, and the Speaker failed, refused, or neglected to recognize him, we thought that he was slighting the entire minority and not the minority leader.
Right.
So we said we had no business sitting in the chamber when our leader was being treated with such level of contempt. So we walked out. We advised the minority leader to walk out, and we walked out with him. So he walked out. So where the procedures in Parliament, the institution itself, is so oppressive and unaccommodating of the views of the minority or a section of Parliament, where there is no enough democratic space created in Parliament for the cross-fertilization of ideas, minority members who are oppressed can walk out. And that's why
disengage.
That's why we started singing the stanzas and help us resist oppressors' rule.
Right.
I was part of the Parliament that started the stanza.
Right.
Yes. But I still believe, but that was not a decision that was to be taken for which we went away.
Right. So, Honorable, if I understand you correctly, the reason why you think that this is an anticlimax, or the reason that you have some problem with this specific decision to walk out or stage a walkout, is because for you, what is at stake is not a principle, it's a decision making, which for you is a necessary part of the democratic
process.
Right.
It's a necessary part of the democratic process.
So stay and be part of the democratic process. Okay. Because you're going to take a decision. You're not demonstrating against something.
And Ghanaians are totally appreciative.
Right.
And understanding of your position. Stay and be part. We know as members of Parliament anywhere have limited authority to introduce policy or initiate policy. Very limited authority. So we know the policy, initiation of policy in Parliament is the preserve of the executive. Right. When that policy is introduced in Parliament, everybody, including the minority, have the right to critique the policy, suggest alternatives. And they did that. And they said, look, cut down on expenditure.
Right.
I mean, he said, look, the Auditor General has even shown that we have lost more money than we could have by use of fraudulent procurement processes than the introduction of e-levy. So take back all the money or tighten the procurement processes to ensure that we save those monies. And if we do, we won't need to burden the people. They suggested those. He said, look, the impact on the poor and vulnerable in society will be dire. And so you are helping to make people poorer by the introduction. They argued all that, and we are very grateful. But I'm saying that not having stayed and voted, we denied us the opportunity of, first of all, testing the resolve to fight it to the end.
But they want to test
the
Supreme Court and the principles surrounding the decision that was made.
But when you have an opportunity to test the resolve of the majority to have their policy passed, do you defer it to the Supreme Court?
Good point. as a parliamentarian, what are you more interested in? Parliamentary proceedings or judiciary proceedings? That's a very good point. That's an absolutely brilliant point. But let me ask this question, and I feel free to decline, and I know that it will be an uncomfortable question for you. Do you think that this, this court, and I'm choosing my words again very carefully, do you think that any good thing will come out of this one?
Well, I cannot see through the crystal ball. I don't have that capacity.
But using your experts,
but as a lawyer,
right,
and as a person who tries to determine whether or not I have fair chances in court of my case being held and me getting a decision,
right,
from the facts at my disposal and my understanding of the applicable laws, do I stand a chance that I will be able to persuade the court enough on my side? I say yes. There's a very slim opportunity for us in court. Yes, slim because, you see, first of all, I'm a believer in the political question theory, the political question theory. I believe in that. A political question theory is simply the theory of separation of powers. That wherever we have a democracy, there are certain activities that are within the exclusive preserve of various institutions or arms of government. So the judiciary, the Chief Justice empanels the Supreme Court. You can't inquire into how he empaneled the Supreme Court. It is within the preserve of the judiciary. You can't inquire. Okay, if the executive, the president nominates a person as a minister of state, you can inquire into why he nominated that person. You just have to investigate that. I mean, you just have to subject that person to vetting by as provided in the Constitution. But you can't ask the president, why did you? Because it's within the exclusive preserve of the. So if the person meets the criteria for qualification under the Constitution, you can only look for other ways of satisfying yourself that that person is otherwise qualified or has the capacity to deliver on the mandate that he's been given or that is being suggested. So the same as Parliament, and that is even captured. Parliament in the Constitution and in the standing orders, that Parliament regulates its own affairs.
Right.
My understanding, my 15 years experience in Parliament teaches me that Article 104 of the Constitution, which in the case of Justice Abdullahi and the Attorney General has been rechristened by Justice Yoni Kolendi as the voting quorum. We used to say numbers. We used to say, oh, anytime that we were going to take a decision in the House, which was necessary and then and important and required the numbers to be able to do that, and we appear not to have the numbers, a member of Parliament will rise on his feet and draw the attention of the Speaker to Article 104 of the Constitution and indicate that it appears to him that we don't have the numbers to be able to take the decision. So we could debate the policy and principles, but we will defer the taking of that decision until we have sufficient numbers in the House to take. So we never called it voting quorum. We just said we had no numbers to take a decision. Now the Supreme Court has given us a lexicon that we can use. So the voting quorum is that you must have at least half of the members of Parliament present, and that has been worked out to be 138 of the Constitution. So until that number is present, you can't take a decision in the House. And that Article 104, in my view, is not self-invoking. There's no requirement in the Constitution or the standing orders that says that before the question is put to members of Parliament, the Speaker must satisfy himself, or to use the constitutional language, the Speaker shall satisfy himself that the numbers available in the House are sufficient in terms of Article 104 for the taking of that decision. There's no such provision. And so it's not self-invoking. It's not self-invoking. So that's why you realize that immediately the decision in the Justice Abdullah case was given, I still remember, I've seen videos of my colleague, former colleague, Roxanne Damfiamapo, raise issues on quorum, which resulted in the rejection or deferment of decisions to be taken on loans, 2 loans that the government had contracted for the purposes of carrying out development projects in this country, when he indicated to the speaker that we didn't have the numbers. So somebody must, my practice that I've seen while in Parliament has been that somebody must raise the matter of quorum.
Right.
Now, there is also a principle of law, and we call it the presumption of regularity. I think it's section 37 of the evidence decree.
The presumption
of regularity.
Of regularity.
That where an official is performing an official duty, where a person is performing an official duty, there is a presumption that that duty is being performed regularly. Okay, it's a rebuttable presumption too. So if you want to fault that decision, you must provide evidence
that is irregular.
That is irregular.
Right.
You must provide evidence.
Irregular.
So you see why. So you see why there is a remote possibility. The evidence that the minority has now is the numbers logic.
Right. However, we've never been in this situation.
Yes, it's the numbers
so you
logic.
Can't prove
the numbers logic. So if so far as they didn't raise a quorum in Parliament, they are now going on the numbers logic. So look, NDC has 137 members of Parliament, and all the 137 members of Parliament were not present in the House. That left
and they were not present in the House.
Yes, and that left Parliament with a 138 member Parliament. If the majority side were constituted, there would be 138. But we are aware that one of them, Ajua Safo, was not in Parliament.
2 actually, Honorable.
We are also aware that the Minister for Chieftaincy Affairs was not in Parliament.
Right.
And so that brings their number to 136. Assuming that it was even only Ajua Safo who was not in Parliament, it's still 137. And in their view, that is not a quorum. So it's a numbers logic.
Right.
So that's a novel case. Will the numbers logic persuade the Supreme Court to rule in their favor? I don't know. And that is where I think that is where they have a slim margin. And I say a slim opportunity because the law has been passed by Parliament. And the enacting formula for legislation in this country is bills passed by Parliament and assented to by the President. That's the enacting formula. So immediately a bill is passed by Parliament. You heard Bagwin say that the e-levy had been read the 3rd time and what? And passed. So Parliament has passed the e-levy by the declaration of Mr. Speaker. And if the e-levy is transmitted, the bill as passed by Parliament is transmitted to the office of the President, the Constitution enjoins the President to sign the bill within a time frame.
Honorable, are you saying that even if the minority goes to court and the court sort of grants what the minority wants, and again, me choosing my words very, very carefully, based on the precedent, because that's what we are told that this case is going to be about the precedent, as in the court should show us good faith by standing by its own decision.
Yes, by indicating that quorum is 138, and so in this particular case, they are able to demonstrate 138. They are able to demonstrate through the numbers logic that the MPP did not have 138, and the court says, okay, we had said earlier in the Abdullah case that you need 138, and so far as you don't have 138, this decision cannot be constitutional.
Right. If that happens, you're saying that even if that happens,
the bill will have been assented already.
Right.
And the Supreme Court will not injunct. You see, where a statute or, and the constitution is a statute, but a higher statute, places or gives a person a duty, imposes a duty on a person, and that person is performing that duty legally, you can't injunct that person from the performance of that duty.
Honorable.
So when the law is finally assented to by the president, it becomes an enactment, and the whole dynamics of the suit will change.
Honorable, is there a process by which we can go back to Parliament and get Parliament to go back and redo everything again?
Well, in my life,
constitutionally,
in my life in Parliament, I never experienced that, and I don't know
is
of
there
any
room for that.
I don't know of any.
Or in our
I don't know
orders?
of any practice that will. I'm not aware of any. Maybe we'll have to research that, but because I don't know of any practice that will get a matter that has been passed by Parliament to come back. Who will lay it in Parliament? Who will bring it to Parliament? Because a bill becomes the property of Parliament when it's properly laid in Parliament.
Honourable, then there are lots of disadvantages with the hung parliaments as well.
The hung parliaments are, even traditionally...
Honourable, let me play the devil's advocate. Please forgive me. I will go there. And of course, this is a criticism that has come up against the minority before. I mean, only because I'm playing the devil's advocate, I will go there because it is my job to do that. People now, understanding the gravity of what has happened and the fact that this wrong strategy could get us actually having to live with the e-levy, would then now be looking at conspiracy theories and look at situations where it's possible that the minority is not being exactly truthful in the way that it is exercising discretion and it is playing this democratic game. Is that a real consequence of a hung parliament?
Yes. First of all, I don't think that is a wrong strategy. I think it's a problematic strategy.
Okay, problematic strategy.
Yeah, because we won't know.
But I expect my parliamentarians to know very well enough not to go for problematic strategy. So much is at stake.
I'm choosing my words carefully because I'm not privy to that strategy.
Right.
But I'm just evaluating. Okay, and I've also said, even to a member of Parliament, that it is precisely create those theories. Okay, because I have had conversations. What did all the members? Did the leadership have the buy-in of all the members?
Because there are lawyers there who understand the implications.
Or was it the case that the decision was taken by a few and all the other members were whipped into line? Now, if the other members were whipped into line, are they not entitled to question that decision?
But do you think that this was on the spur of the moment? Because watching it on TV, we just saw some of them getting up and calling their friends to join in.
Yes.
Watching it on TV. It didn't look like something that had been planned earlier.
And some of them were even resistant.
Right. Some of them were still seated. Right.
So why was that the case? I don't think that was...
And this decision is important enough that a lot of thought should have gone into this.
Yes. So that is what is given, is fueling the conspiracy theories. That's what is. Because you see, I just gave you an example of a situation where the minority, when I was in Parliament, took a decision on the spur of the moment, when in our view, in our presence, our minority leader had been disrespected by the speaker. We walked out.
Right.
You didn't need to encourage anybody to. We just said, no, we won't tolerate this.
And you didn't.
We didn't.
Right.
Okay. But a situation as important as the passage of the consideration and passage of the e-levy, where the leadership was moving out and the backbenchers were resisting the walkout.
Because all indications were that the numbers game was actually in the favor of the minority.
Well,
that
is why I say it's problematic, because as a former member of Parliament, I have known that the visual picture in the House does not always turn out to be true. You might find that all the seats of the majority are occupied. But when the voting is actually done, they might fall short.
Right.
You will not be able to account for all the members on the majority side in a voting situation. And I also know that the minority could also suffer the same fate.
Right. So perhaps they knew that some of their members were not present. We need to fish them out. If that's true.
Well, no, we are all assuming.
Honorable, we are Ghanaians, we don't want to pay e-levy.
We are assuming. I'm just saying that. So the way to have ended this suspicion was for them to go. You see, like I said, they have fought a very good fight.
Right. But they didn't end well.
Now, in the Bani, we say that, well, you can try your best. But it is not always your best that will get you the results.
Right. It's the results we want.
The results we want.
So it's the results we want.
So if you don't get, you try your best and you don't get the results, people might be understanding. For instance, or not. For instance, if the 137, or in the case of the Asinov, he was not there because he was in court, then you had voted. Then we had seen 136 members of parliament vote, and you were still beaten. Spirits don't vote, do they?
No.
Yes, so understand that that was your strength. That was your strength. You could do nothing about it. I mean, what you can do nothing about, no one will quibble over that. No. You get my point. You can do nothing about that. We were 106 in parliament.
Honorable, we need some answers. We need some answers, and also I want to bring in the viewers at this point. So I will take a quick commercial break, Honorable, just a quick one. When we come back, we would like to hear from you. So this will be the perfect time to send in your views, your comments, your questions, using the WhatsApp line and also via our Facebook page. Stay with us to be right back.
Trasacco Estates, home to Accra's most beautiful and luxurious homes, presents its newest addition, Trasacco Springs, a premium master planned community of service plots surrounded by an exhaustive list of amenities. The gated community of Tema to Accra Motorway presents you the finest opportunity to own a land that suits your preferred size, budget, and payment terms. Trasacco Springs is open to you for development. Our on-site sales executives are ready. Call on 055 659 2658.
Hello, information.
Madam,
Me, I have still not got the money for that list of expensive building materials you sent to me. The price of the iron rods have been increased too much.
Madam, relax. Look, that's not why I even called. I just visited IPCP, where the engineers told me everything about Trasacco fast floor.
Trawanko, please, those people are expensive. Are they not the people building those big houses in town? I beg, don't catch an eye.
Madam, in fact, I used to think the same until I visited their office today, and they gave me an estimate of how much it will cost. No, the estimate is free. It's cheaper than the one I even sent you.
Wow.
Building contractors, foremen, masons. Visit IPCP, the Trasacco Fast Floor. Engineers will assist you build an affordable, faster, and stronger building.
Oh, madam. It is done.
Wow.
Trasaco Fast Floor. Stronger, faster, and affordable.
This is a Trasaco construction product.
Welcome back to the show. At this point, I'd like to read some of the messages you have sent in. This one is from Suleimani Abdul Rahim. It says, those who passed the e-levy into law were not up to 138 members of parliament. So how can this stand? Let's see how the outcome of the Supreme Court would be on this matter. My outfit is, thank you so much. Thank you. It's from Lynn Steves in Dansuman. I'll give you her number. This one says, perfectly said, without a doubt, and it's from Al-Hassan Mohammed. Coordinator Abu Jamal says, I always admire this man based on his knowledge and wisdom on issues. He also says, this man knows law. Suleiman Abdul Rahim says, I'm from Tamale. I was happy to meet you. Right. Yes, I was in Tamale on Saturday. Yes, I'm happy that I met you in Tamale as well. Tamale is always a vibe. I always enjoy being in Tamale. This one's from Bessa Kokui Mensa Emmanuel says, we are tired of members of parliament. A house where you make laws. You are a disgrace to Ghana. Ephraim Skinny Gafar says, it's Honorable Fuseni telling us that the Supreme Court cannot declare a bill passed by Parliament and assented by the President unconstitutional. Let me come to the other messages as well. This one says, since Akufo-Addo's government came to power, have you seen the Supreme Court rule against them before? Akufo-Addo and his government are an angel before the Supreme Court. So I think this e-levy case will be the same story. His name is Saba K. You didn't tell us where you are sending that message from. This one says, in fact, Honorable is full of experience and he should share his experience with our political science department and the young ones who want to go to Parliament at a cost. His name is Agbanyo Jeremiah from Pusiga. Pusiga, he wants to be your manager, Honorable. He wants you to charge people to teach them about parliamentary proceedings. This one says, good evening, Madam and Honorable Inisa Fuseni. Please ask Honorable what they are doing about the people of SAR, Lolovi constituency, because they don't have representation in Parliament, but they have MMCEs and DCEs without an MP. His name is James from Kumasi. Right, Honorable. So the issues are the same. They remain the same. This thing about, so far the MPP has never lost the case.
I've never said, and I will never say, because constitutional law is taught in Legon in the first year.
Right.
And everybody knows that the review jurisdiction of the Supreme Court to hold an enactment as unconstitutional springs from the Marshall case in the United States of America. I mean, even in the United States of America, the Constitution of America does not state in black and white that the Supreme Court has power to declare acts of Congress as unconstitutional. It was argued by implication the power to enforce the laws in the United States in that famous case that brought about the judicial review of legislation. So I've always known that. So whoever asks that, and I know that Article 2 of the Constitution and Article 140 of the Constitution combined, read together, gives the Supreme Court the power to declare enactments passed by Parliament in excess, underlined, in excess of the powers of Parliament.
That's powers.
That's very in excess of his powers.
It's a very straight.
So you have to read the Constitution as a whole. No one will argue on the simple fact that acts passed in excess of the powers of Parliament can be declared unconstitutional. Right. And the Constitution uses those words, in excess. So that power must be exercised in excess.
How do you prove that this is...
For instance,
right.
Parliament doesn't have the power to pass a retroactive legislation.
Right.
So if Parliament proposed to pass a retroactive legislation, then that...
It's in excess of its powers.
Parliament has no power to declare Ghana a one-party state.
Honourable, in this specific instance of the e-levy, do you think that we can stretch the argument that far?
Well, that's what I'm saying. That
gone beyond.
That's what I'm saying. That
in excess of its powers.
That's what I'm saying. That we are all praying for the development of our parliamentary jurisprudence, and the Supreme Court might help us in developing the parliamentary jurisprudence. I'm a student of law,
but the
so I should be interested.
That the Supreme Court's helping us, all of the Supreme Court's help has favored one side so far.
Even that favoring of one side, that perceived favor of one side, helps in the constitutional dispensation of this country, because MPP government is not going to be in power forever, and the decisions of the Supreme Court are judicial precedents. So in future NDC government, a future CPP government, a future PNDC government can rely on those decisions to make their case.
Honourable, our time is up. Final question to you.
Yes.
As a former member of Parliament, as a former chairman of legal committee in Parliament, and as a Ghanaian, do you think that the e-levy is here to stay?
It has been passed. It's Act 1075.
So much ado about nothing.
The president has assented to it. I just got a text, and then this thing.
So honourable, no way out.
Well, no, I'm just saying that even Electronic Transactions Levy Act has been assented to by the president and numbered Act 1075.
Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Okay, you're welcome.
Always a delight to have you here.
Thank you.
Learn so much every time you come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for sending in your views and your comments. Hopefully, the conversation has just begun. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Whatever the occasion, with ATL, you can never be out of style. ATL, bringing fabric to life.